Hello everyone and welcome back for the new session of Biology Chapter 9 Control and Coordination Part 6. Last time we studied about peripheral nervous system. In that we studied about cranial nerves, spinal nerves and formation of a typical spinal nerve. Then we studied about reflex action. In that, we studied about types of reflex actions. Then we studied about autonomic nervous system. In that, we studied about sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. And then we studied about the difference between sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Today, we'll start with sensory receptors. What are sensory receptors? These are some specialized structure in the body which receives various stimuli from the external or internal environment. The nature of a receptor is defined by the type of stimuli it can respond. For example, a photoreceptor responds to light. So what exactly is the meaning of receptor? It means that when a specific type of stimulus reaches the sensory neuron, that is your receptor, it causes the production of an action potential in it. And this action potential is carried in the form of an impulse. These impulses are conducted to different functional areas of the brain for processing and interpretation. Now, we'll start with classification of receptors. Receptors are classified on the basis of their location, function, and their sensitivity to specific stimuli. So, if we see the types, there are two types of receptors, namely exteroreceptors and interoreceptors. If I say the word exteroreceptors, that means the one which receives external stimuli. And if I say the word interoreceptors, that means the one which receives stimuli coming from within the body. So talking about exteroreceptors, there are different types of exteroreceptors. The first one is phonoreceptors. Phonoreceptors are actually located in the internal ear, that is an organ of Corti, and its main function is sound reception. That means it helps in hearing. Second one is statoreceptors. The location of statoreceptors is again internal ear, but here this time it is located in semicircular canals. And the main function of this receptor is maintaining balance and equilibrium of the body. Next one is photoreceptors. Location for this receptor is a retina of eye, and its function is vision. That means it receives sensory stimuli for vision. Next one is thermoreceptors. Location is skin, and function is that it receives sensory stimuli for heat and cold. If I say heat, you can call it as calorie receptors, and if I say cold, you can say it is trigidoreceptors. Next one is mechanoreceptors. Again, the location is skin, and function is that it is sensitive to stimuli like touch, pain, pressure, deep pressure, etc. And the last one for exteroreceptor is chemoreceptors. Chemoreceptors are divided into two parts, that is gustatoreceptors and olfactory receptors. Coming towards gustatoreceptors, the location is taste buds of tongue, and its main function is that it receives the stimuli or it is sensitive to taste, and those tastes are sweet, salt, sour, bitter, and umami. Second one for chemoreceptors is olfactory receptors. For olfactory receptors, the location is olfactory epithelium of nose, and its main function is that it is sensitive to about 10,000 different types of smells. That means it receives stimuli for smell. Coming towards the second part, that is interoreceptors, which is present within the body. It includes three different parts. The first one is enteroceptors. If I say enteroceptors, that means the location is the internal body organs, and its main function is that it is sensitive to stimuli which comes from the internal organs, like it is sensitive for hunger, thirst, pain, osmotic changes, etc. etc. Next one is proprioceptors, and the location is joints, muscles, and tendons, and its main function is that it detects changes in the movements of joints, tendons, and muscles. So it can be sensitive for pain, tension, and different types of vibrations. And last one is baroreceptors. Actually, we can also consider it as mechanoreceptor because it receives signal from internal organ, but we call it as baroreceptors. And the location is that it is present in walls of atria, vena cava, optic arch, carotid sinus. And main functions related to this receptor that it can sense changes in blood pressure so that it can restore the homeostasis, that is the internal constant body temperature, through vasodilation or vasoconstriction. So actually it is sensitive for the changes in blood pressure. Now coming towards the sensory organs or receptors which we have to study in detail. They are eye and ear. Eyes are the pair of sensory organs of vision. These are located in the orbit of skull with a cushion of fat around them. Each eye is spherical round called eyeball. The eyes are protected by bones. You will find eyebrows, upper and lower eyelids with eyelashes, and lacrimal or tear gland. Movement of eyeball within the orbit is controlled by 6 sets of muscles. The wall of eyeball is made up of 3 layers. The outermost layer is called sclera. It contains connective tissue, and the attachment is called cornea. Sclera is the outermost layer made up of dense fibroelastic connective tissue with collagen fibers. It provides attachment to the eyeball muscles. The anterior thick transparent part of sclera is cornea. It is slightly bulged out for focusing light on the retina. The sclera is provided with blood vessels. However, the cornea is devoid of them, that is, blood vessels are absent in cornea. Cornea is nourished by aqueous humor and also by lacrimal secretion. The exposed part of sclera and the entire cornea are covered by a transparent membranous covering called conjunctiva. It provides protection and lubrication to the cornea. The middle layer is called choroid. The three layers are sclera, choroid and retina. Now this choroid region, which is middle region, it is vascular and pigmented layer. It is not a complete layer and it can be divided into three regions. The first one is choroid proper, second one is ciliary body and third one is iris. If I talk about choroid proper, it lines the sclera. Due to its pigmented nature, it actually prevents the internal reflection. The blood vessels of choroid provides nutrition and oxygen to retina. Ciliary body is a thick, muscular, ring-like structure at the junction of choroid and iris. Its epithelium secretes aqueous humor. Attached to the ciliary body are suspensory ligaments which holds the lens. The ligaments and muscles of the ciliary body help in the adjustment of the size of lens. At the junction of the sclera and cornea, the vascular part of choroid sharply bends into a cavity of eyeball, forming a thin and colored partition called iris. It is perforated in the middle by an aperture called pupil. Smooth muscles of the iris help in regulating the size of pupil depending on the intensity of light entering the eyeball. The pigment in the iris determines the color of the eye. Lens. It is a transparent, elastic, biconvex structure. It is suspended in the eyeball by the suspensory ligaments. The third part is retina. It is the innermost delicate part. Innermost nervous part is transparent, made up of three layers, that is ganglion cells, middle layer, that is bipolar cell, and the outermost, that is photoreceptor cells. The photoreceptor cells are of two types, that is rods and cones. Now talking about rods, they contain light-sensitive pigments. They are considered as photopigments. Cones are responsible for daylight or photopic vision and color vision, whereas rods function in dim light or scotopic vision, or we can say black and white vision. The purple red protein called rhodopsin is present in rods, which is a vitamin A derivative. The cones are of three types, which contain their own characteristics photopigment that responds to red, green and blue lights. Various combinations of these cones and their photopigments produce sensation of different colors. The sensation of white light is produced due to stimulation of simultaneous or equal stimulation of these three types of cones. The optic nerve fibers arising from the base of ganglia shows presence of blind spot. Blind spot is an area diagonally opposite to the lens. It is the area of retina from where the optic nerve and blood vessels leave the eyeball. There are no rods and cone cells present in this region, so no image formation takes place. The area lateral to the, or you can say above the blind spot, is called yellow area or macula lutea. At the center there is a depression called fovea. It has maximum density of cone cells and is the place for formation of sharpest vision. The rods and cone cells lie deep in the retina. Now here you will find aqueous chamber, which contains clear white fluid called aqueous humor, and it is present between lens and cornea. Then the second part, that is vitreous chamber. which is the large part. It is filled with gel-like vitreous humor. It is present between retina and ciliary body. It maintains shape of eyeball. It maintains pressure for keeping lens in position. Now, how there is a generation of image? Whenever the light rays from the object pass through the conjunctiva, cornea, through the pupil upon the lens and is focused on retina to form an image. In the visual area of cerebrum, the nerve impulses are analyzed and the image formed is recognized by your brain. Human ear is called statoacoustic organ. It has two functions, hearing and body equilibrium. Anatomically, the ear is made up of three parts: external ear, middle ear, and inner ear. The external ear in human is ear pinna. It is immovable part. It contains auditory canal. It leads to an auditory canal. There are very fine hair and wax secreting sebaceous glands in the skin of pinna and auditory canal. It transfers sound waves to the eardrum. The eardrum or tympanic membrane. Tympanic membrane is formed by connective tissue. It contains an auditory capsule. Now here it is covered by skin on the outside and mucous membrane on the inside. The middle ear consists of chain of three ear ossicles called malleus, that is hammer, incus, that is anvil, and stapes, that is stera, smallest bone. Now on receiving vibrations, these ear ossicles amplify the vibrations and transfers to cochlea. It contains a short eustachian tube that connects the middle ear to the pharynx. Here, this portion connects the middle ear to pharynx. It equalizes air pressure on both the sides of eardrum. Internal ear consists of labyrinth, and vestibular apparatus. Labyrinth consists of bony labyrinth and membranous labyrinth. All these labyrinths are filled with perilymph and endolymph respectively. The coiled portion of the labyrinth is called cochlea. The cochlea contains fluid-filled three chambers. If we take the cross-section of cochlea, we'll find it contains fluid-filled three chambers which are separated by Bressiner's membrane and basilar membrane. The upper chamber towards the vestibule is called scala vestibuli and the bottom chamber is called scala tympani and are filled with perilymph. The middle chamber is called scala media and is filled with endolymph. The organ of Corti is a pea-sized structure located on basilar membrane, that is floor of scala media. The organ of Corti has a sensory epithelium over the basilar membrane. The sensory epithelium is in contact with gelatinous tectorial membrane. The sensory cells have sensory hair and on their free end and so are called hair cells. In between the rows of hair cells are present supporting cells, that is tectorial membrane. Hair cells have long stiff microvilli called stereocilia. Above the stereocilia, a jelly-like membrane called pectoral membrane is present. This organ acts as transducer, converting sound vibrations into nerve impulses. Besides cochlea, the inner ear also has a vestibular apparatus which is composed of 3 semicircular canal and a utriculosecular region with otolith organ. Okay. Now these all 3 semicircular canals lie in different planes at right angles to each other. These canals are filled with endolymph. The base of each canal has an ampulla. Here you can see the ampulla, in which there is a sensory spot called crista. The crista helps in maintaining equilibrium. Vestibule has 2 sensory spots, macula of Secule and utricle. The macula consists of hair cells and supporting cells. Tips of the hair and cilium project in a thick gelatinous sheath, otolithic membrane. Within this membrane, minute particle otoliths or otoconia are secreted. These are made up of calcium carbonate and protein. The macula and crista are the receptors sensitive to the position of the head with respect to gravity. The 3 semicircular canals are arranged such a way that the movement in any plane can be detected by these cells, and the balance and posture of the body is maintained. Receptors for dynamic balance lie in the cristae of ampulla, while for static or linear balance, these are in the macula of utriculus and seculus. Now, pinna of the ear receives the sound waves and directs them to eardrum, that is tympanic membrane. The eardrum vibrates and these vibrations are amplified and transmitted through the ear ossicles to the endolymph inside cochlea. Right now these ossicles will transfer it into the cochlea through oval window. Now this generates the wave in the endolymph. Now these waves, they induce ripples in the basilar membrane. These movements in the basilar membrane causes the hair cells to press against tectoral membrane. This generates a nerve impulse in the afferent neurons. Now the impulse is sent to the brain via auditory nerve. Auditory cortex of the brain decodes the sound. Now coming towards the next part, that is disorders of nervous system. Now disorders includes psychological disorders. If I say psychological disorder, so in a common way or commonly we call it as a mental disorder. Actually, there are wide range of conditions that affect the mood, thinking or behavior of a person and these affect multiple areas of life and create distress for the person suffering from it. So, if we see some of the major categories of psychological disorders, then those are intellectual disability, which we actually used to call it as mental retardation, and now we call it as intellectual disability. Then autism, which is autism spectrum disorder, then bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety disorder, or you can say attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or in short we call it as ADHD, and stress related disorders. All these can lead to all these are actually a kind of psychological disorder which occurs due to the disorders of nervous system. We have to study some amongst it. We'll study next one, that is Parkinson's disease. Now, how this Parkinson's disease is caused? It is normally caused by degeneration of dopamine producing neurons in the central nervous system, and there are certain symptoms which are involved, but these symptoms develop gradually over the years. It takes long period of time to develop symptoms for Parkinson's disease. Some symptoms are like tremors, stiffness, difficulty in walking, balancing of the body, and coordination of the body. It occurs due to degeneration of dopamine producing neurons in the central nervous system. Next one is Alzheimer's disease. Actually, it is a most common form of dementia. Dementia, a kind of memory loss, you can say a short-term memory loss, and its incidence actually increases with the age. So we can say that Alzheimer's disease is a age-based disease. In this, you will find it occurs due to loss of cholinergic and other neurons in the central nervous system. And here, near the neurons, there will be accumulation of amyloid proteins. Because of the accumulation of amyloid proteins, now the functioning of brain stops, or the working becomes delayed, so it causes Alzheimer's disease. Now here you'll find there are certain symptoms which one can come to know that a person is suffering from Alzheimer's or not. For example, that a person who is suffering from Alzheimer's disease will show the loss of cognitive functioning. If I say cognitive functioning, that means it includes thinking, remembering, reasoning, and behavioral abilities. Now here what happens, a person is unable to think properly, does not remember whatever he said, does not remember words, does not remember how to reason any of the answers given, whatever behavior, how to eat, and whatever behavior which are our daily life abilities, these all starts degenerating in such an extent that it interferes with the person's daily life and activities. And because of this, now it becomes difficult for a person to survive, to understand the things properly. So actually there is no cure for Alzheimer's disease, but treatment can slow down the progression of the disease, and it may improve the quality of life of a patient. It is the most common form of dementia. Its incidence increase with the age, showing the loss of cognitive functioning. It occurs due to loss of cholinergic and other neurons in the central nervous system. Now here, the accumulation of amyloid protein takes place, which forms plaque and tangle. Now here, in this part you will find this is the neuron, here is the amyloid protein which forms a cluster, that is plaque. I hope you understood the topic. Let's stop here. We'll continue in the next video. Till then, take care of yourselves. Thank you.